I would definitely recommend you using CentOS for this course, because a lot of companies out there that use a Red Hat for their corporate environment. Now, for the version part, I am using CentOS 7. There's also a version 8 that is out there already. If you want to use version 8, you can. That is perfectly fine, because my course follow both 7 and 8. But my recommendation is that you stick with 7, because a lot of companies, I would say 95 to 99% of them, are still using older versions like 5, 6, and 7. So it will take them at least 3-4 years to get onto 8. So if you're in the job market, or you want to get into the job market, I would recommend you that you stick to 7. Now, for those who wants to go with the Red Hat 8 or CentOS 8, perfectly fine. You could skip this lecture and go to the very next lecture, which has CentOS 8 instructions for download installation. Alright, without further ado, let me get into the download part. So for the download, what you have to do, you have to go into your browser, whichever browser you like, go to Google or any search engine and type CentOS download ISO. Now, by default, it will give you the first page, which will have the link to CentOS 8. We don't want 8, again we want 7. So let's go back, and I want you to type specifically CentOS 7 download ISO, and go to the second link which says index of CentOS 7. Click on that. Now click on x86 underscore 64-bit. Now again, every image, if you click on it, you're probably going to get different links of the mirrors. You could pick any one that gives you that CentOS 7. It doesn't really matter. I'll go to the second one, and I'll click on the 64-bit. Your architecture has to be 64-bit. If it's 32, search for 32-bit. Then click on any mirror that you like, and it will start the download. So you go into this ISO, CentOS 7 x86 1908. Doesn't matter which version or which build it has. Maybe you have a later one, maybe you have an older one. It doesn't really matter. What matters is it's CentOS 7. So go ahead and click on ISO and save. I will not save it because I have already saved it earlier to save time, save your time and save my time. So I'm going to go ahead and cancel. So anyway, for in your case, once you click on OK, it will start downloading, and it will show up here if you're using Firefox. Once it's downloaded, completed, then you need to go to your Oracle VM VirtualBox. Now, if you do not have VirtualBox, that is the latest version. This one, the one I have, is 6.0. If you do not have 6.0, I would recommend that you upgrade it to the newer version. So now I will go ahead and create a new virtual machine. I'll click on New. And the name that I will pick is My First Linux VM. That's just the name of this virtual machine on the VirtualBox. You could pick any name, but if you want to go along with me, pick that name. By default, you see it is picking up Linux type because I typed in the name as Linux, and the version it's giving up as Linux 2.63.x, 4.x, or 64. If you do not see 64 here, you see 32-bit, then you need to change your BIOS configuration of when you start up your own laptop or PC. You have to go to your BIOS setting and enable virtualization. If you need instructions, I have included the instruction. I have given the link to an article which will walk you through one by one as how you could enable that virtualization in your BIOS. So anyway, if it is showing 64-bit, perfect. Go ahead and click next. The memory size is 1 gig 1024 megabyte, which equates to 1 gigabyte. That's good. Leave as default. Next, create a virtual hard disk. By default, it's telling me the recommended size is 8 gig. You could leave 8 gig, or you could change it. We will change it in the next one, in the next slide. So create a virtual disk. Click create. VDI, which is the default one, leave it default. Click next. Dynamically allocated, yes, leave it default. Click next. And now the size. By default, as I said, it's going to give you 8. But for this lab, I want you to type 10. And click on create. Now, our virtual machine is created. As you can see, it's right here saying My First Linux VM. So, let me go back in here, and this way I have a clear background. Alright, so now what you need to do is once your VM is created, go ahead and click on Start. Alright, so once you started, by default it will ask you, I do not have any operating system. Of course, this is just an empty shell or empty virtual machine. Now I need to attach an ISO image to it, and that ISO image is the same ISO image that we downloaded earlier, that is CentOS 7 ISO image. So go ahead and click on this little folder, and now it will ask you where is your ISO image located. My ISO image is located in my personal folder and in my ISO, and I have right here it says CentOS 7. So go ahead and select that and now click on Start. Okay, and on this page by default it will come on this option which says test this media and install CentOS. I do not want to test. Sometimes this option is good if you are installing with the actual CD-ROM, the physical one, the CD, because sometimes it has scratches and it could impact your installation. So that's why you should always test that media before you do the installation. But since we did the ISO image download, and I am very hopeful and I'm sure that the installation, or sorry, the download was not corrupted. So I'm going to use my up and down arrow key, and I'm going to select the first one which says install CentOS 7, and I'm going to hit enter. Now what it's going to do now is it's going to read the content of the ISO. It will copy the content of the ISO, the ones that it needs to start the installation. It will bring it into the memory, and then it will start an installation wizard that's called Anaconda. That's just a name of the wizard that CentOS uses. It will start and it will help us going through the installer process from one step to another. Alright, so right here you're going to see it says the virtual machine reports that the guest OS supports mouse pointer integration. This means that you do not need to capture the mouse pointer. That is fine. You could go ahead and cancel that. By the way, if your mouse is stuck inside of this window, then you could use the right click. You see right here, this little thing says the right control key. This is a control key on your keypad, and that is on your right hand side. So once you press that key, then it will release your mouse. But if it is, your mouse is really going outside, perfect. Anyway, let's get into it. Now, what language would you like to use during the installation process? I am in United States and of course an English speaker, so I'm going to go ahead and pick English, and the English for the United States. If you are in a different country, depending on your preferred language, you could go ahead and select your desired language. Now go ahead and click on continue. Alright, in the next page it says installation summary, and this US is basically the keyboard that has been selected. You don't need to click on that. The first thing you need to click is date and time. So date and time is by default. For me, it is already selected my US time. I am in New York. It actually recognized that, so I'm going to leave that as default, and I'm going to click on done. Then it's going to say language support, and as I said previously, we selected English, and for the English United States, go ahead and click done. If you want to change it, you could change it here as well. By default, it picks up my keyboard as United States English keyboard. If you are again in different country, you could pick according to your requirement. Now comes to the part, let's scroll down on the right hand side by grabbing the scroll bar, and then it says, the next one, it says software installation source, which is local media, which is our ISO image that is attached to this virtual box, so you can leave that as is. Software selection, it says minimal install. When you pick minimal install, it will not install the GUI. It will only install the text way or command line on your operating system. But for this lab, I want you to go ahead and click on it, and I want you to select server with GUI. This way you will have the server with the graphical user interface, and you will see certain things that you could add, remove using the GUI. But again, I would say about 80% of the corporate environment do not use GUIs. They always use a command line interface, because GUI takes a lot of resources, and it could also make your system a little vulnerable for the security threats. So if you are in production or corporate environment, check with your company policy, and then you should select the software selection. Also, if you are building a server for different purposes, you're going to see that the servers has a lot of add-ons that you could do. So when you go to minimal install, you're going to see it has security tools, smart card support, system administration tools. And you go to compute node, it has all the other add-on selected tools and software that are available to you. Again, it depends what kind of application you will run on this operating system. Based on that, you could select any tools or any add-ons, tools or applications that you want. Similarly, when you go to infrastructure server, you probably heard of many of these servers like FTP server, NFS server, DNS server, all that stuff. If you wanted to have them installed, you could actually select them here, so it will install that package. But anyway, if you do not select any package right now at this point, and you remember later on that you need to install, not to worry about, you could just simply do the yum install command, which we will cover later in other lectures, that I will show you how you could install the add-on selected add-on packages. Again, the file and print server will give you different options, basic server, web servers. I do want you to go through them one by one. I don't want you to select any of them, but again, if you want to select, that's perfectly fine. But I just want you to get familiar with what are the options that are available on this menu. But for this lab purposes, for this training, I just want you to select the server with GUI. And now I want you to go ahead and click Done. Now it's actually checking the software from the ISO. It's basically the software selection is going to the ISO and asking, hey ISO, I've been asked to select server with GUI. Do you have the required package? So that's why it's kind of like going back and forth and checking. So anyway, while it's checking, we'll go into the next one where it says system and it says installation destination. By the way, it's finished and it worked. It came back and says yes, I do. The next one is installation destination, meaning where do you want to install this operating system, which disk. You remember we picked a 10 gig of disk, so we'll go ahead and select this one. And by default, it has already selected 10 gig. Then it has check marked on it, and other storage options, it says partitioning. It says automatically configure partitioning. So we are not going to partition it ourselves. We will let Linux pick the partitions for its own, which is a default partition for the 10 gig disk. And now we go ahead and click on Done. Now installation destination is done. Kdump is when if there's something goes wrong with your system and it crashes, it has to log something that why it crashes. And that kind of kernel dump is when if you have it enabled, then it will actually spit out all the information to a log file. So when you have it enabled, that's only when you have it in, it will spit out the logs only when you have it enabled. Okay, so network and host name. So that's where we need to define the network and the host name of the operating system. So you go ahead and click on it. And host name right here, you see the hostname.local domain. I want you to highlight the entire entry and type in my first Linux VM and click on apply. As soon as you click on apply, you see right here it says current host name, which is localhost, which what it had before. So once you click on apply, it will change it right here, my first Linux VM. So you probably noticed that I put in uppercase the first letters, and it changed it to lowercase. Because remember, Linux is a case-sensitive operating system, meaning it matters if you put in uppercase and lowercase, but it prefers that you always use lowercase letters. Alright, so now let's go into the network where it says Ethernet ENP0S3. Right now, this is the network port that is assigned on your virtual box. So right now, you see it has a hardware, which is a MAC address. It has a speed of 1 gig, and its subnet mask is by default is picking up its local IP. So what we need to do is we need to click on configure, because you see right now it's turned off. Let's go ahead and click on configure. And the only thing I want you to pick in configure is go to general and click on automatically connect to this network when it is available. Now what this does is it actually start your network or pick up an IP whenever your computer or your operating system restarts. So go ahead and click on save. And you're going to see right away it picked up. And by the way, this is going to be your Wi-Fi network adapters that is given to you by your virtual box. So now go ahead and click on done. Alright, the last part is security profile. So we do not have any security profile, but if you are doing this installation for your company, check with your company and check with your security folks, see if they have any security that they use or any template, then you could attach it here, which would apply all the security settings. But anyway, this is the lab, and this is something we're going to be learning later on. So now I want you to go ahead and click on begin installation. Alright, in this next page, you're going to get two options while it's going to run the pre-configuration or pre-installation checks and stuff. It is asking us to create a root password. So go ahead and click on root password. By default, root is a system administrative password in Linux, so I want you to pick a root password. I picked a weak password. That is why it's saying this yellow thing at the bottom. It says the password you have provided is weak. The password fails the dictionary check. It is based on a dictionary word. You will have to press done twice to confirm. So if your password is weak, right now as what I have, my password is weak. So you would have to select it done, and another time you have to click done twice. Second option is your user creation. I want you to go ahead and click on user creation, and this is a regular user, not a root or not an administrative user. So I am going to create my account. I'm going to pick my name, Imran Afzal, and the username by default, it'll pick my first initial followed by the last name, and the password, leave the other setting as default. Again, my password is weak, so now I have to select it done twice. 1, 2. Alright, so now you notice right here it's saying installing genome user docs and installing this and that. These are all the packages that it needs to install to complete my installation. And the packages, total packages that it needs to install is 1353. And so far it has installed 58. Now this whole process could take anywhere from 10 minutes to half an hour or 45 minutes, depending on the speed of your computer where you are running this virtual box. What I will do is, from this point on, I'm going to fast forward this entire installation. So if you are sitting now, I will ask you to go ahead and take a break, take a coffee break, or get something to eat. And once it's done, we'll start right from there. So I'm going to fast forward right away and see you on the other side. Alright, so congratulations. The The installation has been completed. As you could see at the bottom right here, it says CenTos is now successfully installed and ready for you to use. Go ahead and reboot to start using it. And also a little message at the bottom that says use of this product is subject to license agreement found at this location. But anyway, you will get the license confirmation that you can read through and accept it in the next once it reboots. So go ahead and click on reboot. Again, this message appears. You could go ahead and close this. Since it is starting the first time, your operating system is starting the first time, it could take us a little while for it to start back again. But that's fine, perfectly fine. Now, licensing part. I want you to go ahead and click on licensing information. It says license not accepted. Go ahead and click on it. And right here, read through it and click I accept the license agreement. And click done. Network and host name, we already configured that earlier, so you don't need to configure it again. Now click on finish configuration. Now it is going to start the GUI, the CenTos operating system GUI now. Alright, perfect. So now you'll see it shows you on the top, it shows you the time, some network information, a speaker. You can power it off from here, just like, as if you see on the Windows environment. Now go ahead and click on your name, because this is the account that you created. I hope you did not pick Imran Afzal, because I hope you picked your own name while we were going through the installation. So anyway, go ahead and click on it. Now provide the password. And once you provide the password, click sign in, it will log you in. But going back again, if you want to log in as root, then you could click on simply not listed and put in the username as root and put in the password. But anyway, I want to log in as myself. I'll put my password in and I'll hit enter. Okay, now we have this desktop looking type of environment that has two icons on it. One is my home folder, one is the trash can. They're pretty big. I usually keep them smaller, so you could go ahead and right click on it and you could do resize icon, and then you could drag and make it smaller, just like that. Right click, resize icon, and drag and make it smaller. You can also move them around, up and down, left and right. So this is your desktop environment. Now if you want to start your terminal. Now by the way, if you are doing this for the first time, this is the first welcome screen after the installation. You could just leave it as welcome, and it's going to say English is for United States. I have that selected. I'm going to click next. Typing, it's already selected for me English. If you want to change that now, you could change it as well. Click next. Location services, I like to keep it disabled, so click on off and next. Connect to your online accounts. I don't like that. I want to keep my Linux machine private, secure, so I'll click skip. And I want to click next is start using my CentOS Linux. Once I click on that, it will bring me back to my desktop. On the desktop, as I was explaining it earlier, you could right click and click on Open Terminal. By the way, this help getting started. Genome helps opened up again. I don't need that, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to close that. Again, these windows are popping up because I am using this operating system for the very first time. So I could go ahead and close that, and I could start the terminal back again. So anyway, you could close that window. Anything that shows up like software updates available, you don't have to get it now. You could click on not now. And this is the terminal that what you want to see, and this is your command line terminal where you could run all the commands, and that's where this is our platform where we will learn everything about Linux. So you're ready? Let's go. Hello folks, this is where we're going to do the CentOS installation version 8. Now, as I said earlier, that if you do not want to go through with CentOS 7 and you want to go with CentOS 8, perfectly fine. That this entire training or this entire course covers both 7 and 8, new feature, old feature, everything. And if you if you prefer, you want to go with 8, let's go ahead and do it now. First thing first, we need to have the CentOS 8 ISO downloaded on our computer, so we could attach it to our virtual machine and then we could do the installation. So I will go ahead and open up my Firefox, and I already have my Google open, and I will type CentOS download ISO. The very first link again will take me to the latest version of CentOS. So the first one I'll pick is CentOS ISO Linux DVD ISO, and it will take me to all the mirrors that actually has the CentOS 8 version. And I could pick the first one, a second one, it doesn't really matter. I would prefer you go with the first one. If it doesn't work, then you go to the second one. Anyway, I picked the first, and now it is asking me to save that file. Now, I have already saved that file previously to save some time, so that is why I'm going to cancel. But if you have not saved it, I would like you to go ahead and click on OK, and it will actually save it to your default location of your downloads. I'll go ahead and cancel at this point. And now once it's downloaded, I want you to go to your Oracle VirtualBox. And one important thing is, if you are downloading and installing CentOS 8, please make sure you have Oracle VirtualBox 6 and above. This is the one that is mostly compatible with CentOS 8. If you do not have 6.0, you could go into the file and click on check for updates, and it will take you to the right link where you could actually upgrade your Oracle VirtualBox. Anyway, now we are doing CentOS 8. I want you to go ahead and click on a new and type in CentOS or Linux CentOS 8, or any name you decide. The name is not important. Anything that you could remember or you could relate to. And by default, it will pick type Linux, the version Red Hat 64. You could pick 64 Red Hat, or you could actually pick the one that you picked, or if it shows up as other 64, doesn't really matter. So I will leave it as default that it picked Red Hat 64 and click on next. The memory, 1 gig, leave that default. The storage, create a local virtual disk, click on create. Leave it default, VDI, default dynamic allocated. And now the size of the disk, I would recommend that you pick 20 gig. Go ahead and click create. And now it has created your Linux CentOS 8. Go ahead and click on power on. Once the window opens up, it will ask you to check where is your ISO image file is located. My ISO image file is in the location. When you click on this little folder, click on that. And if you have your ISO image file downloaded on your desktop, then you go to your desktop or wherever the location is. My location is my personal folder in ISO folder, and here is the ISO image for me, CentOS 8. Click on open, and now go ahead and click on start. Okay, so this is the page where it gives you two options. The first option, it gives you install CentOS Linux 8.0. Second option is test this media and install CentOS Linux 8. Now, if you have the physical disk, attached to your virtual machine or your physical machine, then it's always a good idea to test that media, because many times that physical media has scratches on it, so it will create problems during the installation. But since we have downloaded the ISO, then it's best and it's perfectly fine if you pick the first option. So you go ahead and hit the up arrow key, and it will highlight install CentOS Linux, the very first option. Go ahead and click enter. If you see this message top, you have the auto capture keyboard option turned on. This will cause the virtual machine to automatically capture the keyboard. That is perfectly fine. You could close it. Basically what it's saying is if your mouse is stuck inside of this window, it's because we have certain features enabled. You could get out of this window by clicking the control key, the right control key on your keyboard. So I will just simply go ahead and ignore these messages by clicking the close. Now basically what this is doing right now is it is actually copying some of the information from the ISO image that we have attached. It is taking that and copying it into its memory. And the memory will actually say, hey, give me the installer that will allow me to go through the installation wizard to do my CentOS 8 installation successfully. So I'm just going to have to wait for it to start that GUI, that installer, and once we have that, then we go through the installation. By the way, you could also do the command line installation. So on the very first page, you could have done that modification as well. But if you're doing it for the first time, I will definitely recommend you go through the GUI installation. So as you see, it's showing starting installer. So give it a minute or less than a minute. I'm very hopeful. Alright, on this screen you will get the welcome to CentOS Linux 8.0 or the build. It could be 1905 or whatever. What matters is version 8. What language would you like to use? We'll pick English, and I'm in the United States, so I'm going to pick English in the United States and click on continue. On the second screen, you're going to see installation summary. CentOS Linux 8, the keyboard is US. You can leave that as is. You don't need to click or change that. The localization, the keyboard, it is automatically testing, and it notices that we are in the United States. So it's going to pick the keyboard as English, US. Next one is language support. It's United States and English. The time, again, it's America, New York. If you are in a different region, then it should pick up that region. If not, you could click on it and you could select the desired region. Next one is on the software selection. You're going to see installation source, which is our ISO image, so that shows up as local media. Second one is software selection, server with GUI. By default, it's going to give you server with GUI. You could go ahead and select this option. And you're going to see in the base environment on the left hand side, these are the base environment. On the right hand side are the add-ons for selected environment. Every base environment has all these add-ons. So if you go to, for example, server, you're going to see these different servers that you could run, or these different applications that you could run on your server. You probably heard of FTP, NFS, DNS, all these services that actually runs on Linux or on a server. You could pick based on your requirement, or if you were doing in the production, you could pick depending on your application team requirement. Again, minimal install, meaning when you pick this one, it will not install GUI. But with that minimal install, you could also pick some of the tools that you think are appropriate to do your troubleshooting or systems tool configuration. Workstation. This is a workstation. Is a user-friendly desktop system for laptops or PC. Custom operating system, virtualization host. I actually want you to go through each one of them, go through each and every add-on package, and just make sure you understand and make yourself aware what are the packages or add-ons we have available. But for this training, I want you to simply select server with GUI, which was previously selected as a default, and go ahead and click it done. Okay, once that is done, you're going to notice that it's checking with this ISO image. Hey, I need server with GUI. Do you have all the required packages and the local media, which is the ISO image? It says, okay, let me check. And it goes back and look through the packages and says, yes, I do. That's why you see both of them now into the black font. The next one we have right here is installation destination, meaning where do you want to install your operating system? Which disk do you want to install it on? And you remember when we were configuring the virtual machine, we carved out 20 gig. And by default, it has that 20 gig selected, as you can see right here. In the storage configuration, I'm going to leave it as automatic, which means I am going to let Linux decide how it wants to partition this 20 gig. If I click on custom, then I would have to specify, meaning I want you to give 5 gig to home, I want you to give like 5 gig to war, I want you to give the remaining to root. That comes into custom. So this is a very beginning. I don't want you to get into this because it requires some extra skills. If you are doing it, the installation for the first time, then my suggestion is leave it as automatic and go ahead and click on done. Okay, next option under the system is kdump. Kdump stands for kernel dump. If something goes wrong with your system, something crashes, and if you have that kdump enabled, then it will log all the errors or those messages. So you could go back and review what caused the server to crash. So I'm going to leave that as enabled, or which is selected by default. Next one is network and host name. You click on it, and let's change the host name. Right now it shows up at local host.local domain, which shows on the right hand side. It says current host name is localhost. Let's go ahead and change it to Linux CentOS 8 and click on apply. Again, you could pick any host name that you like, and then you could apply it, and it will show up on the right hand side. This one shows our networking. Right now it's disconnected because it's turned off. Here's the hardware address, which is the MAC address. Here's the speed, which is 1 gig. Go ahead and click on configure. And on this screen, I want you to go to the Journal tab and click check mark automatically connect to this network when it is available. It means every time your computer or your operating system reboots, it actually going to connect to the network automatically, so you don't have to enable it or start the network again. Go ahead and click save. And now you're going to see it has some more information like IP address, default route, DNS. So go ahead, and now I want you to click on done. So host name and network is done. Security policy, if your company has some security policy, or if you're installing CentOS 7 or 8 in your production environment, consult with your security folks, find out if there are any security policies that you need to apply. But I would say 9 out of 10 times this option is not usually selected, so leave that out and click on begin installation. Alright, while it's starting the configuration or doing the pre-check of the installation, it's going to ask you for user setting. It's going to ask you for root password. You need to set the root password, and you need to define at least a user. Let's go ahead and click on root password first. I'm going to specify a root password, based on my choice. It is weak, I understand. I do not recommend you guys to pick a weak password, pick a strong password. But since for me this is a lab, so I'm gonna just leave as is. And by default, Linux sees it as a weak password, and it asks you to press done twice to confirm. So if your password is weak, then you have to press this done button twice, 1 and 2. And now user creation, and let's pick a user. I'm going to pick myself, Imran Afzal. Of course, you have to pick your own name. And by default, Linux picks the first name, initial, and the complete last name. Leave these settings default and pick the password. Alright, password again, and my password is weak, and that's fine. I'm going to press the done button twice. Alright, so now the prerequisites for the installation is done. Now it is downloading packages, meaning it is going to that ISO image, and it is asking, hey ISO image, give me all my required packages. And now it is preparing transactions from the installation source. And what is that installation source again? It's our ISO image. Now once that is completed, then you're going to see the actual number of packages that will show up that actually are needed for this installation to complete. And once you pull it, it will show you. So most likely it's probably going to be somewhere around 1200 or 1300 packages because we are going through the GUI installation. When you have GUI selected, GUI takes a lot of add-on packages as opposed to the command line or without the GUI installation. So anyway, so if it comes up like 1300 packages, you need to leave it running. It could take anywhere, I would say the installation would take anywhere from 10 minutes to 30 to 4 or 45 minutes, depending on your computer resources, depending on the speed of your computer. So I would say at this time, you could go ahead and take a coffee break or a lunch break, and then you could come back after half an hour. And what I will do is I will go ahead and fast forward from this point on. So this way I'm not going to waste your time and my time, and then once it's done, I will meet you on the other side. Alright, congratulations guys. We have successfully completed the CentOS installation. As it says right here, complete. CentOS Linux is now successfully installed and ready for you to use. Go ahead and reboot to start using it. So, of course, go ahead and follow the instruction and click on reboot. Alright, when you get to this screen, you're going to notice that it is starting back again on the CentOS Linux installation screen. The reason it is doing that is because by default your ISO image is still attached to this virtual box. So what you need to do is you need to remove that ISO. So when your system reboots, it doesn't think that it has to boot off of that ISO image. So for that, I would tell you to go to, so to get out of this window and release your mouse, click the control key on the right hand side of your keyboard. Okay, so, and click on devices, optical drives, and simply click on remove disk from virtual drive. Then it will prompt you to force unmount, meaning remove it forcefully. That's fine. Go ahead and click force you unmount. Now it is unmounted. You could verify again by clicking on devices, optical drives, and there isn't anything that attached. Beautiful. Now you need to reset this machine. Click on machine and click on reset. It will prompt you, do you really want to reset the following virtual machines? Yes, that's fine. Click on reset. Now it is starting your CentOS version 8 operating system. Okay, when you get to the initial setup page, you need to select the license information. By the way, if you got to this page after 2 minutes or 3 minutes, that is perfectly fine, because this is initial configuration. First time your operating system is started, it could take some time. It could take longer than what it will take you later on. Go ahead and click on license information and click on I accept the license agreement. Of course, I would recommend that you read through it and click on done. And then click on finish configuration. Alright, when you get this to this screen, meaning that it's waiting for you to log in now, so I have created my account earlier during the installation, so I will click on it and it will ask me to put in my password. So if you go back again, click cancel, and you want to log in as root, then you have to click on not listed and provide the username as root, and then you need to provide the password for the root, and that is the password that we picked during the installation. Anyway, I want to cancel it. I want to log in as myself. Once again, if you're logging in for the first time, then it will take some time for the operating system to come online. So don't worry, be patient. If your mouse is captured inside of this window and it's not going outside of it, then please remember you could click the control key, the right control key on your keyboard to get out of it. Alright, so the desktop, the only important thing that I see on the desktop is your terminal. So right here you could go ahead and click on that terminal, and it will give you the platform to actually run all those commands that we're going to learn throughout this training. So that terminal is, you could use either console and use that terminal, or what we could do is we could find out the IP address of this Linux machine, and then we could log in as through PuTTY. Anyway, logging in through the PuTTY is something that I will show you later. But anyway, at this time, again, as I said, since this is started for the first time, it's going to make you go through some initial stuff. Like at this point, it's giving you a welcome screen. If you need to change your language right now, you can, but just leave it default. Click next. Typing, again, selected for me. Click next. Location services, I would like to keep it turned off, so I'm gonna move this to the left and click on next. Connect your online accounts. I would not like to use those right now, so I'm gonna go ahead and click on skip. And the last option, the last screen is giving me you are ready to go, start using CentOS Linux. So click on start using CentOS Linux, and it should go back to your desktop right after that, where we have our terminal that we opened up earlier. Alright, so again, as I was saying, this is the terminal. That's the one that you need to use to run all the commands. And you could get yourself familiarized with the desktop as well, the GUI desktop. But I would say 80% of the environment and the production corporate environment do not use GUI. So be ready to use command line. Don't get too comfortable with the GUI. Anyway, congratulations once again. You have completed the CentOS 8 installation successfully. Now you could go ahead and close this help window that will also give you some information about Genome that will tell you about the GUI. Anyway, good luck, and let's get moving on to the next lectures, where we'll learn a lot about the command lines and the commands that you need to learn.